I remember Al Feuerwerker, a professor at Michigan, once telling me, he said, you know, Fred, it's going to be impossible ever to do real social history in China because there are no such thing as parish records, for example. They just don't exist. And the documents from the Qing dynasty have all probably been lost. And we'd heard rumors that people had used some of these and that there was people going to use them. So I mentioned several people in China who were very interested in the archives for the Qing dynasty. And they took due notice of this. In 79, I was appointed to lead a delegation of Ming and Qing historians to China. Now, this was quite revolutionary in the sense that we'd had a few historical delegations. They were mainly in art history or earlier periods, archaeology, that were fairly safe politically. Mm-hmm. But Ming and Qing history gets awfully close to the present. And if you, for example, follow this, the recent closing down and then reopening under new editorship of this journal, Freezing Point, was really about publishing a professor's revisionist interpretation of 19th century history. The Chinese are so historically conscious, and they use history in such an Aesopian way as a way of talking about things in the present, mm-hmm. that it's very, very risky to discuss those things. So we figured it was a great coup to have this mission go. And when we got there, the second day we were there, it was again one of those occasions where people we thought were dead or had disappeared or whatever, suddenly were saying, I'm Xie Guozhen, my God, you know, or I'm, you know, Wang Xingcheng, or I'm any number of Zhang Zhongli, you know, very famous people. And
must have been thrilling.
Oh, it was absolutely thrilling. We were all completely a tingle with excitement. Mm. And the second day there, the person who was assigned to be the Chinese called Peitung, your person who accompanies you, who was very, very vigorous, strong intellectual, who made his way through the Cultural Revolution he'd been labeled a number 9 stinking intellectual. He'd mm-hmm. survived that. He was a very wonderful man who'd been a secretary of Guo Monroe, the great Chinese poet and writer and historian, told me in confidence, he said, because I was the head of the delegation, he said, we're going to take you to see the Ming-Qing archives. I said, really? I was so excited. So I told the group about this, and everybody was, you know, where are they? So he said, we asked more about this. He said, well, tomorrow, some of you have never been to Peking before. We're going to give you a tour of the Forbidden City. Well, I'd had, you know, umpteen tours, as had some of the others. And we'll go through the Forbidden City, and then on the other end near Coal Hill, the northernmost exit, we'll get back in our buses, our little bus. Mianbao Che, they call them, those little mini buses, mm-hmm. And we'll go find the archives. And I said, are they nearby? I said, yes, they're nearby. So the next day we were all excited, of course, and we went into the palace. Now, one of our members is a man named Jack Wills, who teaches at USC. He's an emeritus now, who is an expert on Chinese tributary missions, or missions to China from tributaries like the Dutch. And he had his Nikon camera, and I swear 100 rolls of film. He was fascinated with imperial ritual and the palace. So for him, the Forbidden City was really something. He'd never been there before, and he would stop and photograph, you know, every pebble, every fallen tile, every little bronze. It was just agonizingly slow. And meanwhile, everybody was just
everyone else
chomping
wanted
at
to
the
get
bit.
to the other end.
They just wanted to get to the other end. At one point, we walked up we were at the Meridian Gate, and I asked our friend, the accompanier, where are the archives? He said, well, and he pointed over to the west side of the palace. I never really looked over there very carefully before, which is a completely closed-off area. It turned out, we later discovered that it was the barracks and training ground for something called 8341, which was sort of a combination of the Secret Service and the Special Forces. Mm-hmm. super elite troops that guard the leadership in our kind of, like our Green Berets. So nobody could go in there. And there were 5 big, huge buildings done in palace style so that they kind of blended in with the background. He said, there are the archives. Oh my God, those are damn big archives, So I whispered this to my chums, and again, we were all the more impatient. Well, finally, Jack was dragged through this. We got out there at the gate, and one of the sort of minor functionaries helping us with our visit came up and he said, the bus isn't here, looking very puzzled. And I said, really, that's very unusual. Usually things are arranged very well. And a few minutes later, the bus pulled in empty with the driver. The driver looked very troubled. And he explained that 2 of the members of our group, and I looked around, and they were indeed missing, Professor Philip Kuhn from Harvard and Professor Sunikan from Princeton, had commandeered the bus, gone over, and driven into this compound to be the first to reach the archives. And the Chinese they just couldn't believe this. This was so uncollective. This was so, I remember the guy saying, well, he said, when you get back to the hotel tonight, you better get your people together and do a little bit of thought work, which means, sit down and have some self-criticism.
Yes.
So I said, well, we'll do that. Well, we got aboard this bus and went around. The guards at the gate to this very guarded compound had been told that one group of foreigners would come through that day. Of course, we didn't know.
So you're the second group.
So we're the second. So we start to drive through with the guy holding up his little ID card as a Social Sciences Academy functionary, and these gung-ho Chinese expert militarists jump out, and all of a sudden we hear the snicking of cocked AK-47s, and there were about 5 of these semi-automatic machine guns pointing at us, and these guys were ready to fire. They thought we were invading,
the archives.
Mao's compound is only a little way there, up just across the road. And the guy turned absolutely, he blanched, and he said, no, this is all. Well, anyway, we got there, and Kuhn and McCann were forced to wait outside and so forth, looking very sheepish. But then we went in, and they took us into the first vault. Now, this is next to the Ottoman archives, is the largest archive in the world.
You find out now.
Well, I found out when we got there.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know these things had been preserved. The reason they were put in there was because Zhou Enlai had wanted to protect them, and he figured that by putting them in this military compound, none of the Red Guards would dare come in and try to destroy these documents. There are over 10 million sets of them, and you go into these vaults, and it's, my God, it began to dawn upon us. We had our work cut out for us. These are the central archives of the Chinese government for, 268 years.